What's going on, guys? I'm about to start on my newest little project, which is this little guy. We got a CRF80F. I got it on a good deal. If you remember, I got it when I got the XR400. I have not started any work on it. The previous owner told me that it should run with a carburetor clean and a new petcock. Well, I got the new petcock in finally. So what I'm gonna do first off is I'm trying to remove all these plastics, strip it down. I'm sure I need to check this air box because if there was an old air filter in it, it could be bad, it could be okay. I don't know though. But I'm gonna start taking the plastics off and stripping this thing down, and we're gonna see what we can get into. I might take this pipe off. I have some high heat black that I might hit this with to kind of freshen it up, make it look good. But I think this would be a fun little toy just to put around the house. I ended up actually getting rid of the XR400. I had a guy hit me up and he wanted to buy it, and I really don't have time to ride it or anything like that, and he made me an offer and I went ahead and just sold it to him. So hopefully he's enjoying it and having a good time on it. This little CRF80, I might even teach my wife how to ride a clutch. She's never ridden clutch before, and I'm actually in the process of working a deal with a guy right now about a street bike. So it would be pretty fun if I could teach her how to ride a clutch and then get her a street bike and we both be able to go ride. So give me a second. I'm gonna start stripping this thing down and we're gonna get to it. So first things first, to get this seat off, there's two 10mm right here that's gonna release the back of this seat. I'm gonna go ahead, I've already got one off. I'm gonna back this other one off and remove the seat. That way we can get to the other clips that I just found. You can't really see them, but you can feel them right about here. There's little clips holding this plastic on. So if you were to undo this top 8mm and this front clip right here, which is kind of hard to see, right there, you still can't remove it properly without removing that. So we gotta get the seat off first. Don't forget to get that little dowel piece out. All right, once you remove those bolts, you can easily just lift, pull back, and the whole entire seat comes out. Now this is a pretty good time to get in there and clean that up. It doesn't look like it's been cleaned in a minute, so I'll probably clean that up before I install it. But now we got access to what I was talking about. These little grommets right there. Little tricky stuff, so you move those top two bolts and you slide it out that way. So give me half a second and get the 8mm real quick. If you have a little tab tool, it makes popping these tabs easy. But if you don't, all you gotta do, take your little flat screwdriver, flathead, and kind of just wiggle it in there. And once you get underneath the lip of that little pop tab, you can twist it, pry it a little bit, and it'll come up just like that. And you should be able to just pop it out, get the whole piece, just like that. And then we push, and there's the front plastic. While I'm at it, before I start on the tank, there's only one bolt holding these back plastics on, so I'm gonna go ahead and strip that down because I've got to get to the air box anyway. It's just gonna make everything easier. So give me a second, and I'm gonna get this knocked out real quick as well. Typically easier if you got an extension. As you can see, this little pointy piece right here and this one right here go in that grommet and in that grommet. Very easy. Since I want this thing as clean as I can get it, I'm just gonna go ahead and strip it down. The rear fender comes off with an 8mm bolt, one on each side. And then it just falls right off. And that way I can see this whole frame, like a lot of this is dirty. And this is actually where the air comes in for your box, for those of you who don't know or haven't messed with any of this. And I don't know if you can see on this one, it's so dirty in there, so I have no doubt that the air filter in this is disgusting. So I'm just gonna take my time. I'm gonna make sure I keep track of all the bolts, and I'm gonna strip this thing down bare bones so that I can clean it up, make it look good, because I want it to run the best it can possibly can. And that's gonna take me completely stripping it down. I'll be removing this exhaust pipe here in a minute. This gas tank in just a second. Super easy to do this. And then we're gonna be installing a new petcock on this thing. So looking at this header pipe a little bit closer, here's your little flange that's supposed to be on it. And there's supposed to be 2 of these. However, mine only had 1. And it looks as though, let me see if I can get an angle for you. It looks as though the bottom stud was broken off. So, looks like somebody's tried to take the exhaust off before. Not a big deal. It's broken at a certain point. I may be able to find a nut that's similar in thread, just not looking like this, that I can tighten it down on and prevent any exhaust leak if it has any. I haven't ran it, so when we run it, we will know if there's an exhaust leak or not. But when you're trying to buy these guys, make sure you pay attention to little stuff like that. It's the little details that you won't know until you start taking this apart, like me, and noticing that they broke a stud bolt. All right, after you remove that 10 millimeter to the stud bolts, there should be 2. Mine only had 1. There's 2 12 millimeters right here that hold the exhaust pipe on, and then it should just be able to slip out. I almost forgot. There's 1 more 12 millimeter right here by the kicker you gotta get. And there we are. Exhaust removed. All right, to remove the gas tank, this is just a rubber band that is going to hold it nice in place. All you got to do is pull this up and take it off. And then there's 2 different options. You can go the hard way, and you can remove the 2 8 millimeter bolts and take it off on each side, or you can just do the easy way and unscrew this 1 10 millimeter on both sides, and the tank will lift just right off. Very easy. Now that other bolt off, bring it back, slide that piece of rubber off, pull the hose out, maneuver its way up here to loose, because now we've got to get the fuel line off. All right, to remove the fuel line, I'm going to try to be careful so I don't have to replace the fuel line, but it's right here. And there's this little band clip. It's kind of hard to see, but you got to pinch the band clip together and wiggle it over this way so that we can get that off. And then we're going to replace that right there. It's like a little maneuvering, but it's off. And that's not what we wanted to happen. So, that is unfortunate right there. So it looks like the fuel line was dry rotted. And when I went to pull to remove it, it literally just snapped. Let me get this off and I can show you. This thing actually looks horrible. You can literally see the corrosion under that petcock. So we're going to get this removed, install our new one. We've got to get that carburetor off, and then we've got to find the correct size fuel line to replace this. So I don't know if I'll be finishing this evening, because I'm not sure if I have that size laying around. Before I remove that petcock, I'm going to take a little detour, and it's 2 10mm bolts. And I'm going to get this air box off because this has got to be cleaned anyway and it needs to be removed. So I'm going to go ahead and take that off. And it'll also make it a lot easier to get to the carburetor, because then this hose can be removed. There's only 110 on this side. But it'll help get this removed very easy, and then I can get the carb off. And we'll get to cleaning. Another dowel. Don't lose it. Next thing to do, got one screw here holding the air hose to the carburetor. And then I've got two band clamps right here. I've got a big one and a small one. And I think it might be easier for me to do this big one, or it might be the small one. I'm gonna try the big one first and see if that works. Hopefully. I really don't, this small one goes to another hose, and this looks like a really tough angle for me to deal with. So hopefully I can get this big one slid up and off. That way it's just easier. I completely forgot to take this air box out. You got to take this little splash guard off, and it's just two 10mm bolts. All right, I want to show something like I found that was pretty important. That hose I was telling you about with the two clamps, I removed both of them and it wouldn't come off this plastic piece. So what happened is the plastic piece actually came out of the main tube. And I'm guessing because that's older, I'd assume if it was a newer bike, this piece would slip out much easier. However, it was easier, at least for me, to remove this piece versus the hose off the plastic piece. So that's how I got that off. And I'm about to pull this air box out, and then we're going to remove this, which does not look fun to remove because it looks like I'm going to have to use a wrench on either side, because I don't know if I can get a ratchet in there. So lo and behold, just as I suspected, the old filter is in here. It reeks of old gas, and I'm going to have to be very careful getting that out so that I don't make that thing disintegrate in my hand, and then I gotta clean up a bigger mess than I need to. So this right here, this is not gonna be fun to clean. However, we're gonna get it done, and this thing should run very well. I hope. I mean, it's a Honda, so. I managed to get this off. I was actually able to get my little baby ratchet in there. They were two 10mm bolts holding it on there. It doesn't look too bad in either of the holes, and I have one good thing that you always want to make sure when you're working on something old that's been sitting for a long time, is that you can hear or see that throttle. Now this throttle returns, which gives me some hope, because a lot of times if you look when that slide goes up, there's that little skinny piece of metal in the middle. That's actually a little needle that goes down in there. And a lot of times that'll get stuck, or the sides of the walls where the slide is all gummed up. But the throttle actually feels really good on this. And I'm gonna remove it and make sure that we keep everything together. This is the tricky part. If you haven't done one of these before, there's a spring in here that as soon as I get this thread to a certain point, it's going to want to pop out. So you got to go slow, keep this in line, and just like that. Now, if you notice, there's like a gap, I would call it, on this little throttle on this slide. If you want to check this out, let's see if I can get a good view of it. Inside, right there, you see that little indentation on the side wall? When you put this throttle back in, or that slide back in, if you don't put it on there, it won't slide down. So it's kind of like foolproof. If you don't put it on that little tiny groove right there, it won't slide down properly. But I can tell we do have some cleaning to do, because like I was talking about, that needle
it's got a good bit of corrosion on it. You can kind of see where it like stopped inside and just sat shut, which is right about at that line. But all I'm going to do is I'm going to take some carburetor cleaner. I'm going to clean this needle up, probably last, because I've got to disassemble this whole carb. And then I'm hoping it's clean in the bowl. If they did it right before they let it sit, they emptied it out. However, looking at that needle, I'm afraid they didn't empty it out. And it's going to have a little bit of corrosion down there in the bowl, but we should be able to get it cleaned up. So this right here, guys, is what a new Petcock looks like. Brand new. I'll put the link in the description for it. It fits several models, I think from like 60 to 110. But brand new, looks good, right? This is the Petcock that I pulled out of it. Absolutely worn out and pretty much useless. We could reuse these, but since the kit came with new ones, we might use these. However, I was just looking, and if you compare the old dowels to the new ones, they're not the same. However, these holes on the bottom could be different. They don't look too different, but they could be. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go ahead and reinstall this. I'm gonna clean this surface really well so that there's no junk, no possible debris gonna get in there. And then put the new Petcock in. And we're probably gonna have to take a break because I've gotta find a fuel line. Hopefully I can find one at my local auto parts store, and I don't have to order one online. But it almost looks the same size as possibly some weed eater hose. So I'm gonna look around and see if I have any. Hopefully I do. For the sake of getting things running, I found this hose laying around in one of my cabinets. I reused one of those little C-bands, and I also had a little baby hose clamp. It's on there pretty tight. I'm just doing a little test fit. It seems to work, so we're gonna give it a go. I'm gonna install this, take this apart, start cleaning it, and I'm hoping fuel doesn't leak out here. Typically when you use a hose that's slightly too big, your fuel will leak out here or down here where it meets the carburetor, but I'm hoping it's just tight enough with that clamp and this hose clamp that it doesn't leak, and then it'll work until I can figure out where I can buy a hose that has this small of a diameter, because it's much, I mean, I wouldn't say much, but it's, you can tell, you put the hoses beside each other, this one is definitely smaller. I just took the bowl off the carburetor, and I've got to say, it is absolutely horrendous. I'm not going to be able to show you me cleaning on it. I'm going to tell you all about it when I'm done, but this is going to take me using both hands and getting in there and scrubbing, because this is terrible. I've never cleaned a carburetor this bad. It is, it's quite terrible. Floats still kind of work though, but, so that's good. It just looks like we're gonna need some deep cleaning. So I'm gonna get involved, and I'll be back with y'all as soon as I get this cleaned up. All right, so after a painstaking hour, I got this sucker cleaned up. We got the new fuel line on it. Hoping it works. If not, it's gonna be annoying because I've got to pull this whole carburetor off, because it is a very difficult and tight fit to get to this fuel line spot. But I went ahead and I removed the air filter out of here. I'm going to clean this up, wipe it out, wipe it down because it is muddy. Somebody was definitely having a good time on this. And
We're gonna put this back on. Sad news is I will not be able to start it tonight. I went to look at my gas can and it is completely empty. I have no gas because I had to put some in the lawnmower the other day and I didn't realize that I used it all. So I'm gonna put everything back together, get it cleaned up, get it ready. And then in the morning, I'm gonna go get some gas and we're gonna hear this thing run. All right, so I got the bike put back together, but we're having some issues. I don't know if you can see it on camera or not, but the seal to the bowl is bad. It drips gas down, not fast, but it does drip, so the seal's bad. Another issue is when you give it the throttle, it'll hold the RPM and then it'll go really high and then it'll come back down and then it'll idle. So like if I were to do a little blip like that, instead of it going whom, it like holds the RPM really, really high and then it comes back down. I might have to take this off and clean it again. I'm gonna talk to a buddy of mine. They own a small engine shop, and see if maybe this is salvageable. If not, I'm gonna look on Amazon and see if there's a direct replacement for this. I wouldn't assume that this carburetor would cost too much, probably like 20, 30 bucks. But that might be my best bet with the seal going bad on the bowl and this RPM issue. And I mean, this thing was, y'all saw how bad it was. I'm probably gonna have to get me a new carburetor for it, but it's just crazy. I mean, you can drive it down the road, it sounds fine, acts like it's gonna run fine, but the moment you hold in the clutch, it just dies on you. And it's pretty frustrating. So I'm gonna end this off here. I'm gonna look into the carburetor deal, see if I might need to get a new one. I probably will just buy a new one since it's 20 to 30 bucks and it'll just be a direct replacement. Super easy, and this bike will be up and running. Because it does run fine. I mean, no ticks, oil's fine in it. It goes into all the gears, no issues. So, I mean, it's probably just that old junky carburetor. I mean, it was horrible. So, I'm ending it off there. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.